February 18th, 2026, regular meeting of the South Burlington School Board. The first item on our agenda is the proposed executive session. The topics that we're going to discuss are real estate, labor negotiations, and receiving confidential attorney-client communication for the purpose of providing legal services to the board. And we may also talk about employment of a public officer or employee. We may not. So one or two, just one. Two.
Because of the combo.
Okay, because of the combo. So I would entertain a motion to find that premature public knowledge of the real estate stuff that we're going to be talking about in the executive session would put the district at a substantial disadvantage.
I move. Second.
Laura moves, Dan seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. Hi, Michelle. I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session.
I move to enter an executive session.
Laura moves. Second. Austin seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are now in executive. All right, we're all now in executive session, and joining us will be Joe Clark, Superintendent, and Joe McNeil, District Counsel. So. Okay, you're good. All right.
I saw that in one of your.
So we are in for, yes. I'd like to call back to order the February 18th, 2026 regular meeting of the South Burlington School Board. We just got out of an executive session where we talked about employment of a public officer employee, labor negotiations, and real estate. And we also received legal counsel. And at that executive session, we had Joe McNeil, District Counsel, and also Dr. Joe Clark, Superintendent. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is announcements. Does the board have any announcements? All right. The next item on the agenda is reviewing and accepting the agenda. So we have comments from the public. Then we have our student representative report. Then we have an action item on the Williston Road Streetscape project, which is related to the back of Rick Marcotte School. Then we have monitor report 2.9, communication and support to the board. Then we have superintendent report, update on special education and also professional development overview. Then we have some discussion items. One big question is how to monitor special education, because we currently don't have a monitor report on special education. A second reading of policy E2 security cameras. You'll remember that we changed the executive limitation, and so this is the follow-up to that. And then also an opportunity to talk about the budget communication plan, and then consent agenda and planning. Are there any amendments to the agenda? So one amendment that I was going to propose is that I was going to recommend delaying the monitoring of report 2.9 communication support to the board. Michelle and I worked with Dr. Clark to work on that, but I'm not quite ready for it. It's a special monitoring report because it requires direct monitoring, and that's just not something that any of us have done before on the board. So if it's all right with you all, I want to push that off and reschedule it for another time.
Fine with me.
Okay, great. So sounds like 2/3 were okay with that, so we're gonna strike the action item on monitoring 2.9 communication support. I think Michelle was more prepared than I was, but sorry, Michelle. The next item on the agenda is comments from the public. So there are 3 opportunities for the public to comment at this time about any topic. Also, before the board takes action on an action item, but only on the topic being action. And finally, if were a specially warned community forum on the topics that were warned for that community forum. And this is not, there's no community forum today. The board will not respond to public comments except during a community forum and on the topic warned on the agenda. There's no community forum. You'll be given up to 3 minutes. Please do not violate anyone's privacy, and an official complaint or grievance cannot be filed during public comment. Do we have any comments from the public? No? All right, let's see, it's 6. Let's roll it for early. Still no comments? No. Okay.
Oh, Larry's one does, I mean, I put that list looking for people in the room, but never mind, I called this.
Speech.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the student representative report.
Thank you, guys. South Burlington School District will have winter break from February 21st through March 3rd. Students and staff, enjoy your time off. The middle school is hosting their FHTMS Olympics, which are inspired by the Winter Olympics. Over the next 2 weeks, advisory groups will engage in fun collaborative activities that emphasize teamwork as well as school spirit. Momin and I will be presenting our kitchen table discussion findings to the high school staff at the next staff meeting following winter break. As a reminder, the first discussion topic was engagement, and we asked students questions about what made them feel most engaged in class, and kind of looked at some of the panorama survey data we saw. The participation was great. We involved the SLAM program, which is a peer leadership program within the school, and they all had great feedback to give us. We plan to continue developing that discussion, try to tweak the process a little bit, and then hopefully it will become a regular part of the high school advisory schedule throughout the year. Momin and I would also like to say that we've been doing a voter registration table in the lobby during lunch. So we had, I think, 8 or 6 18-year-olds sign up today to vote, and then we had a bunch of 17-year-olds sign up before they can vote in November as well.
It's awesome.
So been up to some fun things. That's it.
That's great. Is there any board questions on that?
Can you explain, cause maybe it was during the last session, the last meeting, and I missed it. Can you explain, what did you call it, the roundtable session that you're doing? What is
The
that
kitchen
exactly?
table discussion.
What is it called?
Kitchen table
Kitchen table
discussions.
discussion, okay.
Yeah, so, when me and Momin got to take a look at some of the panorama survey data, we saw that there was some trends in both engagement and sense of belonging that, were concerning within the high school, and we thought coming up with some kind of like systemized discussions within advisories, which are, a group where students feel pretty comfortable, I think, by senior year discussing with their peers. We thought that could be a good way to maybe increase sense of belonging, have students feel more comfortable having hard discussions with each other. We started with engagement because we thought that was a topic that a lot of students can dive into very easily. It's their personal experience in high school, be enthusiastic to give their teachers feedback as well. But I think our long-term goal is that, people will be excited to hear that there's a discussion, and they'll see that when they give feedback to me and Momin or to staff, that there are real changes they see in their education happening. So cool. Yeah, still in the process, like not exactly perfect. So
That was great. The only thing I love that. I'm just thinking when we did the
meetings last year with like Joe and we took you around to the different schools. And we were doing the interviews. I was really impressed when we would go to, also the middle school because there's such a group that's really engaged. And I would just wonder, is there any opportunity to engage with any of the students there as well? Like some of their some of their student leaders to also consider how you could take that, because I think that's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
And trickle that down to some of the other, other younger grades, you know what I mean?
That's a great idea. I think, once we get the format of it really set, and if we do see that students are loving it and we're seeing results from it, I think we could probably just have a discussion with the middle school principal and see if we can have both the high school and middle school during that kind of thing.
I love it.
So
That's
great
awesome.
idea.
Great.
Holly, did you do anything fun yesterday afternoon?
I did do something fun. Me and Bowman went on town meeting day TV with Dr. Clark. For his first, what is it called? Will?
In the know with Dr. Joe.
Yes, and know with Dr. Joe. We had some good discussion about a ton of things, phone policy, all things, so. Yeah, thank you for having us.
It was the pilot episode and I jumped the shark because I got the best guests on the first episode.
Thank you.
And is that something we can watch on town?
It will be, on their stuff, and then they have not finished editing it yet. When they get it to me, it'll be all over our stuff and it'll be on town meeting TV. And I'm looking into a way to also convert it into a podcast that people can listen to if they don't want to watch. So every month, we're into once a month and another inside look at what's going on in the South Burlington schools.
When you do that, will you share a link to that?
Yeah.
You will? Okay, good, thank you.
We'll share it all over.
Yeah. All right.
Is that something that you approached them about, Joe?
Yeah, actually, when Seamus and I were there to talk about the budget, we just got to chatting. It was something that, back in Ohio, in my old place, there was a local cable channel and I did a monthly show there for 12 years. So I just told them that and they said, oh, we can do that for you. And, so we came together really quick and they're awesome. You show up, they have everything set up. They do all the editing, the recording, sit and chat for about 30 minutes. It's great. And Holly and Moman were outstanding guests and they represented South Burlington really, really well. Were you nervous?
For during it. I was a little nervous. You asked some tough questions. You had some good ones. But overall, no, it was a great experience.
That's great. The next item on the agenda is an action item on the Williston Road Streetscape project. So the concept here is to give some land to the city of South Burlington between Williston Road and the back of Rick Marcotte Central School to allow the city to work on that streetscape. This is something that's been discussed at, I believe, many school board meetings in prior years. And we also discussed at our last meeting at length. We have had presentations on it from the city manager, the manager of the city TIF district, also from Joe Clark, our superintendent, and also from Lissa McDonald, the principal at Rick Marcotte. All of them have been supportive of this project. Is there any board comment on this? All right, so, and this is an action item, so we'll obviously be entertaining public comment after we have made the action. But before we vote on it. So I move that the school board finds that the Williston Road Recreation Path Project, along with the improvements proposed, to be beneficial and not adverse to the school district by providing better and safer pedestrian and student access along Williston Road and to school district schools, and accordingly approve the grant of the proposed warranty deed of easement to the city of South Burlington and authorize the chair of the school board to execute the same and any other necessary documents relative to the grant. I would entertain that motion.
So I move.
Laura moves, Austin seconds. Any discussion? And this is a public comment. Go
Can
ahead.
you hear me or see me?
Oh, no, can't see you, but can hear you.
Okay, hey, that's good enough. My name's Ryan. I unfortunately sent you an email very last minute this afternoon about this project. Basically, I want to caution you against the statement, Tramus, that you just made, because the path is not a safety improvement. It is a beautification project only. And so by making the claim that the beneficial finding is improved safety from it, or that we would in any way encourage students to use it, I think sets the school up for potential liability, but also potentially like real harm to students. Again, sorry for sending the email very late. I tried to write a short email a few days ago and it just kept getting longer. Basically, my background is in engineering and urban and transportation planning before I came to the school district. And so what we find a lot with these sort of what I'll call them like legacy projects at the city is that they aren't really planned out very well, and they're sort of cobbled together in a way that doesn't make a lot of sense or reach towards really specific safety objectives. So by doing the beautification project itself, it invites more people into a space that isn't being made safer, because again, they aren't making safety improvements to the road or the crossings with this project. The school should continue to try to direct students away from Williston Road and to enter from the regular pathways near and around Market Street. And it's not to say that you can't or shouldn't provide the land, but the beneficial finding shouldn't state safety. Along with that, I think the city's been very historically hostile to doing safety improvement type things. It's been pretty good under Jesse, but we don't know how long that will last, or even if one council person changes, that could all go away very quickly. And so I think it would be judicious to get written agreements from the city about future safety improvements and to use those as the beneficial finding of the exchange of land for future improvements to students accessing the schools.
Thank you. Joe McNeil is in the audience, district council. Joe, do you have concerns about us creating liability for the district if we are if we include the word safe in this motion?
I do not. I do not. While it is certainly possible to argue about the extent of the benefit coming from this project or any project, it seems almost axiomatic that what will be what will go in place of what now exists along Williston Road cannot help but be better from both a liability standpoint and actually a safety standpoint. From and I'm not an engineer, so I don't profess that. I did hear the speaker talk about improvements to the roads and crosswalks, and I have nothing to say good, bad, or indifferent about that. That might be a very good thing, but I think ultimately the question before the board is whether the project represents a mutual benefit, to the city on the one hand and to the school district on the other. And I believe the answer to that is yes, and, part of that discussion occurred in executive session, but, I don't think we're creating a liability for ourselves.
Thanks, Joe. That was very.
Thank you very much. Is there any board discussion on this motion and its phrasing at this time?
I do appreciate the caller giving us some other context into the history of safety precautions, and I understand the caution around not holding someone accountable to our children's safety. So I do appreciate that, but from what we learned about the project last 2 weeks ago, I did not get the impression that this entryway would be used with any greater frequency because of the change that would be being made. So I'm not too concerned that a lot of children would be using this area. The principal pointed out that there are a few students who live close on that one street where walking in that way takes some time off of their commute. But then she also pointed out that there would be a better locking system there on that gate. And we also heard that the fence would be 2 feet higher, which feels like a little safer to me. Again, I'm not an engineer either, but just from that perspective, I do appreciate the concern, but I also feel like we have seen a lot of improvements with our exciting new city manager, and I feel comfortable moving forward with the language the way it is.
Yeah, I would agree, Emily, with everything that you've just said. And I also appreciate Mr. Doyle's comments, because I do think it gives us something to think about and perhaps future communications with the city. But I also believe that it's not just pedestrian safety, there's other student safety that comes from the higher fence that's there, and, just protecting the students in that sense that we had talked about, because I know there was some issues previously with paraphernalia being thrown over the fence and having that buffer zone. And so I think there are some other facets of safety that, go beyond the pedestrian safety, like we said. So, yeah, I just wanted to add that, but I really do appreciate his comments and his very thoughtful email, because I did have a chance to review it.
I would also like to say that we're gonna hold the city's feet to the fire when it comes to safety around our schools. There's been some great work in partnership between the superintendent and the city this year, dealing with safety issues actually around Rick Marcotte, but that isn't to say that our job is done. And so the reminder to always be thinking about this is well taken, and certainly, we're going to protect our kids, and it's good to always hear feedback when we can do that in a better way. So thank you to the commenter. At this time, any other board comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Michelle, are you there?
Yes, sorry,
think
double
you-
muted. Aye.
Aye, okay, aye, so the motion passes. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
The next item on the agenda is monitor report 2.9, but during the agenda planning at the beginning of this meeting, the board decided to strike that and move that to a later date, because it is a different kind of monitor report that we're not quite ready for. And so Michelle and Joe Clark will continue to work on putting together that monitor report for the board. The next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. So,
Yeah, we have 2 items requested by the board to talk about. The first is an update on special education, and here to give that is Nicole Carter.
Hi, everybody.
Nice.
It's nice to see you again. I feel like I was just here. Okay, I think. This is always I think I share my screen.
Yes.
Thank you, Nick. I know I will. Okay. One more moment, I just need to. Put in the slideshow. Okay. So this is a report to the South Burlington School Board on special education. And I called it a primer because I believe the request said,
Thank you.
speak to us. And I did my best, but Seamus, I think I failed, so.
Well, my request is just to explain it to me like I'm an eighth grader.
I will do my best. Okay, so these are the questions that were forwarded to me. What is special education? And then in terms of what it is, what laws created it and who pays for it? And then who does special education help? And a sub question of what does success look like? And then thirdly, what is the trajectory of outcomes over the past 3 to 5 years, up, down, steady? So before I answer any of those questions, I just found out this is a really important piece. This slide deck and all the answers in it are K to 12. It's not including any pre-K information. And I did that because pre-K in Vermont is its own thing. And I find if I'm doing an introduction at an 8th grade level, it's actually better to separate the two so that they're both clear. So this is just K to 12. Okay, so I started by providing you with the big picture. This is a new graphic that I just created to help me keep track of everything. And this is basically an attempt to show you what MTSS looks like, multi-tiered systems of support. And the top tier, tier 3, is where specialized instruction lives. This is not a tiered diagram of students. It's a tiered diagram of resources. So the idea is that schools can provide better supports and services for everyone when they think about what are we doing for all kids? What are we doing for some kids? And then what are we doing for kids who require specialized instruction? And in an ideal world, that's only 5% of the population. That's not a number that exists anywhere in Vermont. But it is the ideal, and it's important to know what the ideal is, I think. I'm imagining you guys are just gonna answer questions, so.
So you're
Okay,
saying,
I was
Yeah.
just about to do that.
Yeah, please.
Where does the 5% ideal come from? Is that a standard set at the state level? Is that just a general best practice?
It's from the research level, from the folks who do deep thinking. It's actually, a tiered intervention system is a public health model for hospitals. That's where it started. And the idea was that if you can, and then it was adopted into schools, and the idea if you can get if you can really get your universal system meeting 80% of the needs, you'll only need to give specialized instruction to 5%.
So, philosophically speaking, which might be tough to answer, if these ratios are wildly far off, what would a possible explanation or conclusion of that be? So if there was a tier 3 need for specialized instruction, rather than being, 5, 7, 8%, it was like 40%. What conclusion might we draw from that? That our tier 1 was insufficient in some way, or tier 2 was insufficient in some way?
I think rather than insufficient, it's complex educational change, and it takes a long time to change many things to get there. So for instance, for those of you who are as old as I am, in the 70s, medicine didn't include lots of preventative screenings. So I'm going back to the medical model, right? But now as an older woman, there's all these preventative things that you just get. And that was the medical model. It took it, not to betray my age, but a lifetime almost for that change to happen. And so I think it's a similar process.
So it could be just a sign of a developing system.
It's a much better answer.
Not necessarily shortcomings at one
No.
tier where people are falling through that tier into the next.
No.
and are you gonna cover why we have a multi-tiered system in Vermont? Or like what law?
I'm not.
So what law brought MTSS?
So MTSS formally came to Vermont through Act 173. Where the state said, we are not using our resources in a way that benefit kids, both in terms of best practices, for their academic and social emotional development, and also best practices for the use of our resources. And that conversation started, I think the first MTSS meeting I went to was in 2013. That's when the state really started to say, we need to look at this, and then it became a formal state. We really need to do this in 2018 or 19.
I think it was 2000. This is team. I think it was.
So,
Yeah.
so special ed in Vermont since 2018, the approach has been multi-tiered systems of support, which, is that right? And that's kind of it's coming from a public health approach. And the research says that we should be looking at 5% of kids needing special ed. But as you were just saying, we just started MTSS, we just started multi-tiered. It's not entirely surprising to you that more than 5% are currently in special ed.
Yes. The only thing I don't entirely agree with was the first part, because MTSS is an idea about the whole system, not just special education. It's how do we build it? How do we have a framework that gets the resources in the best place possible for kids at the lowest cost?
Right. And like you were saying, in a preventative way so that we detect it early and often.
Yes. Yep.
I do have a question about that. Nicole, I'm wondering if you could provide us with a description of the distinction between IEPs and special education and the MTS system generally, but specifically MTSS 3.
And you can do that if it's in your presentation already, you can wait, but otherwise.
I think it will come through, although this is the only slide where I talk about MTSS, so let's see if the other two, Michelle, if you're okay with it, we'll see if the other two come through, and then I can come back to it.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so the first question is what's special education? So, simply put, per Seamus's request, under Federal Individual Disabilities Education Act, students ages 3 to 21 are eligible if they have a documented disability in one of 13 categories that affects their ability to make progress in school. That's like the most simple definition I could come up with. Under this law called IDEA, schools must identify, called child find. We have a legal obligation to find children and evaluate students at no cost to the family. That's like the most basic. Yep, okay. And then it gets a little bit more nuanced. So I tried to break it into two categories. What makes it different than other kinds of instruction? So if we go back to the slide, what's different about instruction in tier 3 than in tier 2 and tier 1? What's different in about instruction is it's individualized. So the instruction that comes out of an IEP by law is determined by only thinking about that one child. Very different than like Laura thinking about 20 students in her class. It's just one child. The decisions about the instruction are made by the IEP team. They are the deciders. And then the IEP team has to aim for instruction that's least restrictive. So thinking about how do we do this in a way where kids have as much access as possible to their non-disabled peers. Those are sort of the three big ones. And then on the right, what I tried to say is what are the core types of services? So what does that actually mean? For some students, it means instruction in basic skill areas and functional skills. So basic skill area, math and literacy, functional skill, getting to school on time, being able to engage in interpersonal friendships at school, being able to follow instructions. Some students get therapies. The most common ones are speech, occupational, and physical therapy. Interesting that I didn't put mental health therapy there. That is one of them also, and an important one. Assistive technology, so tools like speech to text. Accommodations, which I'm gonna step out of the eighth grade box just for a minute. Accommodations on an IEP are actually 504 civil rights law embedded within the IEP process. And the accommodation is, right, removing the obstacles so that students can show their learning. And then modifications, which is the ability to change what a student is expected to learn. So you're literally changing it from what it was in that sort of 80% universal instruction to what that one particular kid needs to learn.
And so for the accommodations, that you said 504, is that like Americans with Disabilities Act or something, or where does that come from?
The 504 legislation, if memory serves, as part of civil rights legislation in the 1960s that came out of Lyndon Johnson's work with Congress to pass it. So it's embedded within there. American with Disabilities Act, and if anybody can correct me if I'm
The
wrong.
Rehabilitation Act of 1973,
There we go.
where the section 504 comes from.
There we go.
And so an IEP can mention,
An IEP has embedded within it 504 rights.
So an IEP is a 504, but 504 is not an IEP.
Yeah, so way to say it.
And 504 is actually from that, that's from something that
Yeah,
Congress.
from the Rehabilitation Act,
Wow,
which came before special ed,
I had
before
no
IDE.
idea.
IEP is a little bit more, I guess, serious.
And 504 accommodations can exist without IEP, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's the.
And 504 accommodations are employers are obligated to provide them, colleges are obligated to provide them. I believe last time I was in front of you or somewhere with you, I explained that the Atlantic just had a great article that 32% of all students at Stanford University receive 504 accommodations. So you can get them anywhere. Okay. So what laws created special education? I feel like I just went through that. I apparently in making this, I was being really clear. And then this is my attempt to try to be clear about funding, because I think funding is really complicated with special education. Probably the most complicated funding for education. So let me walk you through this. On the left in green is what you can ignore because that's not special education. So this is just grant funding that the district receives. On the upper left, we receive federal grant called the Consolidated Federal Program, which is called title funding. The district right now gets about $1.5 million, and that gets fed into tiers 1 and 2 for MTSS. So
not special ed.
not special ed. Yep, we use it to build out universal and targeted instruction in ways that are supplemental. On the right is everything that's special education. So special education has 2 core grant sources plus at the bottom, the local funds from the district. So in the middle, there's something called the Vermont Census Block Grant. This is federal funding that goes to the state that is then allocated to the district. Fiscal year 27, which we're going to embark on soon, is the first year that the Census Block Grant amount will be the same for every district in the state of Vermont. It's taken about 5 years to get there. When the state rolled it out, they realized they needed to slow it down. And so they used a calculation. And so as of July 1st, every state will get $2,350 per student based on a 3-year LTWADM. Yeah, I know.
Nicole, is this including Medicaid?
No,
Okay, because
I didn't put Medicaid in here because you can't use Medicaid funds for special education.
so did that change? Because that was not true as of even 10 years ago.
Well, as far as I know, for at least the past 6 or 7 years, that's been the case, is that we get Medicaid funding for special education services we provide. We get a reimbursement.
Right.
The state gets a percentage of that. It's a large percentage, 30 or 40%. We get the rest. We have to then use that for our students who are, this is their language, not mine, at risk. But they can't be already identified.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So you are not allowed to ask if a child receives Medicaid, but you can do the billing automatically. And if the child is receiving Medicaid,
You're allowed to ask a parent to sign a form saying that they receive Medicaid, but they're under no obligation to do so.
okay, great.
And is when you're saying the gradual rollout, now everybody's getting the same amount, will that result in more money or less money to South Burlington?
It's gonna result in a little bit more. So South Burlington was a low spending district. And so low spending districts at the beginning of the rollout of the census block grant every year received more money. And I believe I think next year will be about $200,000 more than we got this year. So that money, remember when I said this is kind of complicated, that money, when the state changed their laws in 2018, said that you can use that money for tier 3 first, right? You can use it for all your special education obligations. And then if you have money left over, you can use it anywhere else you need to, which is a huge change for the state. It used to be that you could only use special education funding from the state for special education. So now, let's say we got $500,000, we actually get 6 million, but let's say we got 500,000 for easy math. Since this is 8th grade, $500,000, if we used 400 on special education, that other 100,000 we can put back into the pot and use for general instruction. Then to your right is the IDFB federal grant. This is a separate grant that comes straight to the district from the federal government that we apply for each year. This one, the amendment is due on April 15th of this year. It's only for special education. You can't do anything else with it. And we get, as of this year, approximately 1.7 million. So together, those two grants from the federal government and through the state come to about 7.7 million. We have another 8 million that goes into special education from local funding, meaning not from grants. My device just disconnected. I think that's a sign that I'm talking too much.
No, mine keeps doing it too.
Oh. Now, at the risk of really pulling you into the weeds, probably the most important thing for you to understand as a board is that special education money under federal law has to meet something called maintenance of effort. I put the exact words in here. I did. So in simple terms, school district receive the money to pay. In exchange for that money, they have to promise to keep spending at least the same amount of their own money as they did the year before. Which makes it really difficult and deliberately difficult to reduce special education funding because of maintenance of effort.
Is that a commitment on the aggregate or on the per student levels? The aggregate?
On the aggregate.
So, sorry, let me rephrase that.
Okay.
Saying that if you're committed to spend the same amount as last year, right? Hypothetically, what would happen if your students of need were cut in half?
So the two ways that maintenance of effort doesn't have to be it's okay to not meet your maintenance of effort for 2 reasons. If you have staff who retire, that's one way you can say, like, I have less staff, they've retired, and so I can't meet what I met last year. And the other way is if students are exited from IEPs.
Okay.
But if students stay on IEPs, then you have to maintain the same effort as the year before.
And exiting an IEP is different than graduating from the district.
Oh,
Right.
yes.
So you could actually have a decline. I mean, in a scenario, it is possible you could have a declining student body on IEPs, but still a commitment to fund at the same level. Interesting.
That is a great summary of the facts.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very clear.
I skipped a slide. I just want to see why I skipped it. Oh, I was just, okay. So, other questions before I tell you who special education helps? Does the money feel clear? Because that's like clear enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. So special education is designed to help students aged 3 through 21 who are living with a disability, and there are 13 disability categories. These disability categories, like, there's 2 things I should have said in the beginning. Disability categories were written a while back when language and how we understood and conceived students who had special education needs. So it's dated language. Some of it's pathologizing, and none of it includes neurodivergent understanding of people, right? So it has an understanding that you're either neurotypical or you're disabled versus, I think, a more modern idea of like, we're all to some degree different, and some of us are neurodivergent in that our differences are more pronounced, but we're no less important or different, really. Okay, so what does success look like? Student success, this was your question. Student success is determined by the IEP team using annual measurable goals for the individual student. So if you haven't been to an IEP team, students have goals. And the expectation is that the school will do what it needs to do to ensure that students meet those goals, that they make progress. If they don't make, and I made 2 example goals. So the first one, I'll just do the first one, by whatever date, when given 10 addition and subtraction problems using numbers up to 20, this is exact. Student blank will solve them correctly with 80% accuracy in 4 out of 5 times. That's what an IEP goal is. And it's the work of the district to make sure the student makes progress on that goal. And if they don't make progress, to document it and fix the goal so the student can make progress. So the goal is always making progress. You gone?
And you have any reflections on the,
I've just sat in on, probably hundreds of these meetings. Yes, this is kind of how it goes. And then you meet again to see if you've reached the goals. And then throughout the year, special educators are constantly checking in. Which, if the child is not reaching the goals, then there's like pressure's on. Yeah. So,
I don't know if you're going to get into this, but typically the support system looks like special educator, the teacher, and then depending on the level of supports needed, an interventionist or
Like SLP.
educator or.
SLP, and then our clinicians,
what's
So-
SLP?
speech and language pathologist, so it's conceivable that one child could have 5 adults. And then usually it's probably like 1 to 2, there's a case manager, and then there's a special educator, or just the SLP, so there's like outside of the classroom teacher, there could be like 2 to 5 people also working.
Or it could be just like the math teacher and the special educator and the student.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry to ask you questions. Can you talk just a little bit about low incidence versus high incidence, and just give the board a general understanding of, when you talked about the 13 different categories?
It's okay to say if I'm gonna get there.
Yes,
Okay,
thank you,
I think it's in, and if it's not, I'll come back to it.
thanks.
So success is measured using IEP goals. That's the easiest answer. This is where I think I'm gonna get to.
Okay, and it says teacher data logs, and this is also, asking, people's experience. Does this impose a significant burden on teachers, or is it more on specialized staff? Or is it all the teachers, or is it all of the staff, or is it not significant burden?
There's a very common saying in special education that frustrates everyone, but is always true. It depends. There are times where it is experienced as a tremendous burden. And then there are times when it's not.
And I think, Nicole, maybe the burden is the amount of 504 plans, so to accommodate in a class of 23, to accommodate 15 different plans can feel really overwhelming. And I know the special educators are feeling it. If they have to file these reports, everything is, the paperwork really is everything, as you know, and it has to be done on time. And it's like a full court press, everybody's gotta be on the same page. But it's hard when the special educators, a caseload of, I don't know, 15 kids, it's a lot to manage, and then the classroom teachers gotta. Also, like, I have to talk to several case managers throughout the week and accommodate all, because everybody has to be accommodated, so. I think we're all feeling the pressure, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's a large legal obligation.
Yes.
So So I think this answers, Dr. Joe's question. So what's the trajectory of outcomes? This is a hard question to answer for a number of reasons. I'm new to South Burlington. We've had 3 shifts in how we, track data for special education, and the most recent one, I don't know if it contains all the information from the previous ones. So I did the best I could, and since August of 2020, our current system shows that 787 K-12 students have been exited. So you really only exit special education for 2 reasons. Either the parents revoke consent, which is not common, or you make enough progress that you no longer need an IEP. Because the work of an IEP team is to essentially make it so a kid doesn't need an IEP anymore. Legally, that's what we have to do. And so, where the math I got to was an average of 39 per students are exited, per year. I can't tell you if that's good or bad because it's actually not a data point anyone in Vermont reports on, so it would be an interesting metric to look at across the state.
And so for all monitoring reports these days, we're expecting longitudinal data wherever it's possible, but this is not a monitoring report. So I think it's okay that there's
Yeah.
not like a graph here over time. And we'll be talking about that later tonight, how to monitor special education.
Yes, and I think you all have the most recent monitoring report, which should be the 3rd one. The state only started doing it 3 years ago. And then the next piece is, our current system as of today, the system, right, every day kids come on and off IEPs, so I can only speak for right now in February. It shows 455 South Burlington School District students out of 2,368 that are eligible and on IEPs. That's 19% of our enrollment, which is fairly typical for Vermont. It can get higher, but I would say 19%, and that's where I would say if the ideal is 5%, right? That's where the 5% is helpful in the sense that it's a lofty goal. Of those 19%, I broke down the categories that students most frequently are found eligible. So 27%, so this is 27% of the 455, right? Qualify under specific learning disability, 20% under other health impairments, 16% autism spectrum disorder, 11% emotional disturbance, which is the unfortunate term the federal government uses, and 10% under speech and language impairment. So because our data is relatively thin in terms of the past, I was able to pull, the state just released a report recently, and this is the state average in comparison to the range in all SUs, SDs in Vermont over time. It's not, I thought it was helpful to see that it's 18.7, we're at 19, so we're about average for the state.
Right, and this is longitudinal data for the state, but not for us.
Correct. Correct. And then this is a graph coming out of EduClimber, which is a super helpful data system that we use for MTSS data. And what this is showing you is the percentage of total IEPs in South Burlington School District. So it's showing you per school to give you an idea. And then those are literally the students.
So that's an interesting trend. That there's, by the time you get to high school, you're at 31%. You know,
Yes, and the high school has the kids from all 3 schools. So if we have one elementary school.
But this is not 31% of all students at the high school have an IEP. This is 31% of all of our students on IEPs are enrolled at the high school.
Yeah, right.
oh, that's
exactly.
a key.
Yeah,
Wait, yeah, I
yeah,
misread that.
Yeah.
That's very different.
Yep. And it doesn't add up to 100% because it kept pre-K out of it. So
So
when we look,
12% of the kids that are on IEPs are at Chamberlain.
yes, exactly. Thank you for helping me say it
Yeah.
more clearly.
Yeah, so the high school would make sense because it's the biggest building.
And presumably, right, as people are diagnosed throughout child at various stages, right, and people could, you don't really, so. You expect to see most at high school for other reasons as well.
That's accurate. I think the older a student becomes, the less younger students are identified more often.
Out of curiosity, do you know that the population of Chamberlain, Rick Marcotte and Orchard, does that track with how many students are there? Like as a number of students increase, does the percentage? I don't know if you know.
We can get, I mean, we will
I'm just
definitely be able to
curious,
get you
yeah.
that information about what percentage of the students in each school are on it.
Well, yeah, I
It'd be interesting to see,
was just wondering,
yeah.
in my mind, I would think maybe that Chamberlain has the fewest number of elementary school students between all three of the
They have, they have the small.
That's right.
smallest population. That's what
Yeah,
I'm trying to,
also-
yeah, okay. And I'm not sure about Rick Marcotte and Orchard, but I could imagine maybe Orchard has
Orchard's
the
the
most.
biggest.
Yeah, so that
This
does,
track.
yes.
Yeah, it tracks with the percentage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if I've answered Michelle's question. Have I answered your question, Michelle? You out there? Let me know if I didn't.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have myself double muted. Not yet.
Okay. I just don't want to lose it. So this is another EduClimber slide. So this is the most recent performance of students receiving special education services. So this is only showing students who are identified as being on an IEP in terms of how they performed on the VT-CAP for literacy this past spring. And the graph is deliberately simple. The green means that you're at or above benchmark for VT-CAP. The red means that you're below. And it's by grade with third grade on the left and ninth grade on the right. And this, I imagine, looks and feels similar to what Monica shared earlier in the year.
Right.
And then this is the same graph, but for math.
And
And then the next slide is questions.
So. I mean, it would be, I'd like to circle back and talk about. As we're going forward, if this is even, I mean, how are we going to? Help improve those numbers?
And I will say,
That's a
look,
lot.
we have a discussion item later today, how to monitor special education. And I think that would be.
Yeah, I mean, but this goes beyond special education, that slide right there, because that's not the 19%. That is showing, if you're looking at that, if that's.
This one?
If you go back, yeah, one slide.
Look on my screen, it's up to yours, it's not
Oh,
updating.
for some reason, mine's, so yeah, if you're looking at that, like if you're back one. So 84%, just as an example, fifth grade. Is testing below. Oh, this is only the students on the IB. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
on the-
Okay. Sorry, I missed that part. That's a critical distinction.
Yes.
It is, and it's still.
Yeah, and
real
it's still
concerning.
It is.
Slash alarming.
Yep.
Michelle, did you wanna ask your question again? And you're muted, just so you know.
You muted?
Thank you. That's why I put my camera on too, so that you could see me talking without hearing me and let me know. Thank you. So the question that I'm trying to get at is to make sure that we all have a common and true understanding of the difference between Tier 3 and an IEP. Because I think that the graphic shows that students with IEPs do get individualized attention. But I guess what I really want to, and correct me if I'm misunderstanding this, but an IEP is not granted because a student is assigned tier 3. An IEP is granted because they have a diagnosed disability. They are coincidentally getting individualized instruction as discussed in the notion of a tier 3 student. Is that right or wrong?
It's almost right and almost wrong. I think I would say it a little bit differently, and you tell me if I'm making sense. MTSS is a framework for how resources are best distributed in terms of instruction, what teachers do and the funding they have to do it. Tier 3 in pure MTSS land is only instructional practices for students on IEPs. So it's not sorting students, it's sorting resources. So if we want to think about speech language pathologists, speech SLP service is almost entirely a service you receive when you're on an IEP. So that's a tier 3 resource that's specialized. So it's, yeah. Is that making sense?
Yeah, no, I think that answers my question, and I don't think it contradicts what the point that I'm trying to make is that it's a simultaneous designation for the same students, but it's not MTSS that drives the IEP designation. True?
Yes, correct.
Like, we could have IEPs without MTSS.
Totally. Yeah.
We could have the IDEA Act without Act one
Yes.
73.
Yes, because MTSS.
Exactly. And it did predate.
Because
sorry,
MTSS was adopted as a framework because there was so much success in the public health world with thinking about resources in this way. That the more that we can provide universally to people, the less they need the most intensive thing, right?
Right.
The more we do mammograms,
Right.
the fewer chances are that people are going to have really expensive surgeries for cancer. And so it's a similar idea.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there any other board
Helpful.
question
Really
on the
good.
special ed update?
Can I add one thing?
Yes.
Because you mentioned the monitoring report.
Well, we can talk about that in the discussion item.
Okay,
if
I
that
just
works.
I think a helpful way to think about it.
Great,
Okay,
that'll be a good,
lovely being with you.
thank you. Back
Thank
to you,
you.
Joe.
Can you stop sharing, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Whoa.
So, Nicole's presentation was very impressive. I imagine you might not find mine as impressive. As you know, Nicole's been doing a couple jobs, with curriculum and special ed. And so I offered to take the professional development, report off of her hands so she could do the special ed report. So I say that trying to lower your expectations about what you're gonna see. But I do want to talk about professional development here in the district and what the, really what professional development is for, what we're currently doing and what we hope to get to in our perfect world. So the philosophy behind professional development is, as everything we do should be, is to improve student outcomes. That is why, that's why we provide professional development. Adults who learn drive students who learn. So professional learning needs to align to the board's ends and operate within our executive limitations. Coherence and impact matter more than an accumulation of isolated experiences. In other words, the best professional development is job embedded and ongoing. We get emails daily from people selling us programs or projects or speakers who want to come in and, give us $10,000 and we're going to give a speech to your folks about how to be better instructors. Those rarely, provide any bang for the buck because the best professional development is ongoing. And it is a strategic system, not a compliance activity. We don't do professional development because we have to. We do professional development because we want our kids to perform better. So you have.
And before you move on from
Yep.
that point, I thought I heard it said, I can't remember by who, that like one of the most important things to academic achievement is professional development being available to teachers. Is that, how would you feel about that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think the number one indicator of how well a student performs is how good the instruction is that they get in a classroom. And the better tools that we can give teachers to perform in the classroom, the better the students are gonna want to. So you do have, this board has a governance framework that talks about professional development, in ends 1 through 1 to 1 through 4. You talk about lifelong learning and academic proficiency, personal development, and citizenship. Executive limitation 2.4 talks about financial conditions, right? So we are not, we don't have unlimited funds to provide professional development. We need to comply with 2.5, which is the financial planning and the budgeting, and compensation and benefits and equity are all of these board policies that in a way touch what we do with professional development. So this is what we do now. Currently, the South Burlington School District's professional development plan. So we have what we would call district-led initiatives and teacher-led initiatives. District-led initiatives are, we have these days where you probably hear from parents saying, why do I have a late start or why do I have an early dismissal on these days? Well, these are district-led in-service days for PLC, professional learning communities, to review data to see how their students are performing so they can then alter their instruction based on what the student is either doing well or not doing. This is where they build the MTSS system, where they do equity training, where they do compliance with instruction. So that is district-led. Schools, each school also has its own professional development. Again, PLC work, TLC might be another term you hear, professional learning communities that are aligned with each school's continuous improvement plan and school identified needs. The district has a continuous improvement plan. Each school also has a continuous improvement plan based on their own individual data. So they have opportunities and time to do professional development based on what their goals are. Then we also have teacher-initiated professional development. A lot of this is based on contractual language, where staff members are granted reimbursement to go to professional development of their choosing, conferences, classes, workshops, those sorts of things. In our negotiated agreement, teachers can get reimbursed for all of those things, and they have latitude to select what it is that they would like to work on.
Can I ask, in terms of keeping up their certification, do the district-led or school-based thing, PLCs work, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Does that add anything to the teachers needing to keep their certification up?
So I'm going to talk with Ohio, and I'm going to guess Vermont is the same way. Is that you need to have a certain number of hours or graduate credits of professional development over the course of your license to renew that license. Accurate? And so it can be a graduate class, or it could be an accumulation of hours through workshops and whatnot.
Okay.
Not PLC, no.
I'm sorry, I just meant like the half days.
PLC, okay.
Now you
Ohio, you can. So there you go. There's a difference.
well, okay, I'll just speak for Essex.
You know, like when you have your in-service days, Laura,
Those do
that
not
does
count.
not count.
That does
You
not
can't count those hours.
No, that's just stuff outside. You gotta leave the building.
Yeah, okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So what do we, to be determined is, these are questions we have. do we really have a blend of centralized direction and individual autonomy? Or to what extent do we have centralized directives for PLs or for professional development as opposed to individual autonomy? Those are discussions we're having internally as we talk about next year. Are the professional development opportunities we're given or we're providing assigned or aligned to district priorities? Those are questions we continue to have. And as, again, a couple new folks to the district, those are questions we're asking so we can align moving forward. The collective bargaining agreement has provisions regarding PD. It defines what is required on in-service days within the work year. It specifies compensation that we provide for folks for required professional development. It establishes tuition reimbursement. It outlines conference approval processes. It defines voluntary versus required professional learning, and it creates guardrails around additional hours and compensation. Again, that is all negotiated in the agreement. So that can change anytime we have a new negotiations with our association. And we have a financial investment in professional development. It's not free, right? When you do district-wide in-service, you are going to be paying folks. You're going to have paid folks for conference reimbursement and travel costs, tuition reimbursement. Whenever we do have consultants come in or external facilitators, they cost money. Stipends, internal stipends. So if we're asking somebody to do some professional development that is not on their work time, we need to pay them to do that. And again, a lot of this is contractual obligations, and it also falls under our executive limitations where we're talking about strategic investments in making sure that our students are performing well. So that's kind of where we are. This is where we hope to be in the near future, which is this. We want an evidence-based professional development approach. We want there to be, I think, more thought and more deliberateness in what kinds of professional development we're offering for our folks. In a perfect world, we would have 2 to 3 district-wide instructional focuses. When you have too many instructional focuses, things get scattered, right? So and this is all going to come together, right? Because the board is going to redo the ends policy. We're going to create a strategic plan. We're going to do a continuous improvement plan. And all of those things should pinpoint us to these are the things that we should be focusing on. So I can tell you what most folks do. Something is usually related to math. Something is usually related to English language arts. Something sometimes is related to culture or equity or some sort of one of those kinds of things, okay? But they are determined based on actual data that we review and whatever our goals are as identified in the CIP and in the strategic plan. So there should be an instructional focus from data that is pooled in response to the strategic plan. The professional development should be aligned to our priorities. Again, this needs to come through negotiation, but there should be less teacher preference that is outside of identified areas. There is, I think, a fine line between we want to encourage our folks to grow and we want them to have some freedom to learn some things that they feel will be more helpful to them. We need to make sure, though, that that is not preventing us from being able to do professional development for the things that are actually in our goals. So again, that comes through negotiations and it comes through work with the staff. There should be role-specific professional learning pathways aligned with the strategic plan. So for example, on these Wednesdays when we have folks come in half a day late or leaving half a day early, is the professional development we're planning, do we have something planned for everybody? And what I mean by that is you'll sometimes hear music educators saying, what do I do on these days? You're providing something in literacy or math, what am I doing? The counselors, any of the folks that are out of the core academics.
Language teachers.
Yeah, language
Often
teachers.
wonder why.
Yeah, why do we have professional, what are we teaching the language teachers? So Those are questions we need to answer about what kind of professional development are we offering to these folks. And system coherence prioritized over individual preference. There's I'd like to talk about the Sound of Music philosophy, which is we do a few of our favorite things, right? We try to do away with the Sound of Music. It's not a few of our favorite things. It is focused 2 or 3 district initiatives that are going to help our students perform better. In a perfect world, the majority of professional development is going to be led by district experts. We have highly educated employees in all levels, right? In the classroom, in the central office, in support staff. Those are the folks that should be providing the professional development. Why? Well, because first of all, they're trusted because they are colleagues of people they're providing for. They are available, right? Instead of bringing somebody in for $10,000 to talk about a literacy program, who you then have to pay to come in. When we have our own experts in literacy providing that, we have much more access to them. It is less expensive. We can use our teachers and coaches to serve not only as facilitators, but also they can go in and observe. They can do class visits. They can do all sorts of things. When you reduce dependency on external consultants and you develop this leadership inside the structure, professional development is stronger. So that's our perfect world, and it's job embedded and sustained. So it should be integrated whenever possible into the workday, right? Again, it's not. In my career, I'm sure in all the educators' careers, there are times when somebody will bring in a speaker on day 1 and they'll give you all this stuff and you'll forget about it by day 2, right? It needs to be integrated into the workday. So if we're going to do some professional development, we're going to spend a couple hours learning, then we're going to put it into practice. And ideally, we're going to then have time to reflect on that practice in our professional learning communities. So we can talk about, okay, I tried this strategy. This is what the data shows. Was it effective? Was it not effective? If it was effective, let's continue. If it wasn't effective, let's get some more professional development so we can see how we might adjust. Again, the PLC cycles aligned to the district priorities, coaching cycles with observation and feedback. I think it's a very, very strong practice to do instructional rounds where you have principals going to other buildings to observe classrooms to see what's going on. Having teachers being able to go into their colleagues' classrooms to see what's going on and have those discussions. Evidence of student impact collected and analyzed. Doing professional development is a waste of time and money if we aren't going to monitor whether it had any impact, right? You have to be able to tie performance onto the time you're spending and the money you're spending. And then again, like I said a couple times, less one and done. We want more sustained practice and refinement. So that comes to the end of my short presentation, but it's a big lofty goal, and we've been talking all the time about we have a lot of work to do here. And I think I know we are in the right path, right? It starts with the board setting what those ends are, and then it comes to us. What does our strategic plan want to be? What is our continuous improvement plan? And then we can focus on getting this professional development program together. So it's hard work, it's a heavy lift, but it's vital work. So I'm excited to make this change and keep moving forward.
I like the idea of what KPIs might look like coming out of this. How would you measure that? So, I mean,
Yeah.
more to discuss down the road, key performance indicators. So what's the data show you that it's working?
Yeah.
Or where's there an opportunity, right?
Yep.
That's
That's
the
business
old
jargon.
No idea what's on this.
I'm curious about, you know, when I was younger, in-service was always a full day, 2 or 3 full days throughout the year, as opposed to, 1 half day every month.
Yeah.
And I don't know if looking at moving forward, if you feel like there's an idea of whether we keep the model of half day. I'm not asking you to just commit to anything.
I'm so glad you asked that question. Because let me explain to you, one of the frustrations of coming to Vermont from Ohio,
Mhm.
is particular in this region, is, that our district calendar is determined by a bunch of superintendents getting together and putting a calendar together with the requirement that we have 175 common student days. And they do not allow you to veer from that calendar at all. So the reason we do half days instead of full days is because it's not really a half day, it's maybe 2 hour delay, because that still counts as a school day. If we were to take that whole day off, which I would prefer, and I've talked about it and I argued in front of the superintendents, that would not count as a school day. And then we all of a sudden wouldn't have 175 common days with all of the other area schools. And that really irritates some of the folks over there.
Something that has to be fixed by the legislature or by the school?
I think legislatively, there is a requirement that there is regional calendars that are 175 common days. And anybody who's been here longer can tell me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding.
9 to 12 in-service days, right? So then
September
that
service
has to
day.
add up, and then they want to get on.
That's where some of my frustration comes, where I come from a place where each district can create its own calendar and do what it wants. So
I've been
that's-
curious about, and maybe it changed because of that,
Yeah.
maybe it changed because there was a thought that this could work better, but.
Now, what they'll allow you, what they will allow you to do is you can do as many like 2 hour releases as you want. Because it's still a school day, but whenever you cross that threshold to it doesn't count as a school day, you can't do that anymore.
Once you feed the children lunch, that's a school day.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and I can see, there's, pluses and minuses to both ideas, but I can imagine the momentum never really gets going in the way it can with a full day. And also
Yeah.
the parental frustration with early release and late start,
yeah,
especially when you have kids in elementary and then kids in middle and high, which I had. at
I
one
know
point.
it's
And so like,
incredibly inconvenient. I hear from folks all the time.
Yeah.
I hear from folks all the time. We do need to do professional development. And I think the time, I believe firmly that if you give teachers time to work together, that great things can happen for students. So I think the time is valuable. I wish that there was a system that allowed us to do it a little differently. My understanding is there's supposed to be a state produced school calendar in the future under maybe it might even be under 73. I'm not sure. We'll see if that happens.
So we'll see if that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, because right
So
now, that's. not
every
clear.
school would have the same
The
exact.
same calendar. but
So
they would
in,
not.
Yeah,
hold your
don't
breath.
count on it.
Do not count on
but in
it.
our region, I belong to the Champlain Valley Superintendent Association. They put together a calendar. And these are they have gray days, which are days you have control of. And they have 175 common days, which are days you do not have control of, other than you can do.
So there's nothing we can solve here.
Nah,
That's all, Joe.
Thanks for letting, yeah, I wasn't
Yeah.
sure.
yeah,
Where
so
that came
I feel people's pain, because I know it's incredibly inconvenient for folks.
Great. Is there any other board comment or questions? On professional development? I just want to say that I appreciate your focus on professional development. I know in the private sector, growing staff that you already have is incredibly important. So,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
All right, the
I
next
just want to
item,
say thank you, Joe. This was my request, and I really appreciate you jumping right in and sharing the, looking at what we have now and looking forward. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
and that reminds me, just to clarify, which monitoring report tells us how much professional development is happening?
Well, it was the ones that we had talked about in the presentation, which I don't remember off the top of my head, but let me go back to it.
I think we mentioned treatment of staff, but that may not be,
But
you
yeah,
know,
the end.
it wouldn't look like this.
Lifelong learning academic proficiency. I don't know that there is any single
And it,
policy that says you will do professional development, but it all builds up to.
CBA to the collective bargaining, that's all negotiated.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
All right, the next item on the agenda is a discussion item on how to monitor special education. And so just to kick off the discussion, which I don't think has to be very long, unless people want to, this came up at a previous meeting. There was some question of like, well, is there a monitoring report for special education? And there's not. There is no monitoring report on special education. And so if you look at our executive limitations, they're generally what lays out what you have to report on. And so one idea for how to monitor special education would be to put it into the equity monitor report. And one caveat about that is that right now our executive limitations are on equity and policy 211. They list race, gender identity, English learning status, and income level as things to report on. And so we could amend the executive limitation to also list out disability status or special education status. And then that would just be another slide that you would show, you know, making sure that people can still learn even if they have a disability.
Isn't this operations though? I guess I'm confused. This would be like monitoring like our math curriculum and like, isn't this like, I don't see like this is the school board. I feel like that's now getting into operations. That's the professionals in the room. Like, this is a very complicated law to understand. I don't know. If
Sure. I
that's-
think that's a good point. It's like,
I
how to,
just don't understand why.
Could
what
be
we
more
have
like
to do with
a,
it.
maybe an update on it instead of
Yeah, I don't think we should.
getting feedback on.
Getting the state's report. I think that I want to add to that. So the diversity, the equity one that Monica did have charts for students with disabilities. So we were able to see their academic performance. And we'll continue to do that. But I think Dan's on to something. The state does this report, and I was surprised to find that this board hadn't received them. And Nicole told us here that they've been doing them for 3 years now. So every May, the state puts out a monitoring report for our district where it talks about, are you getting all of your IEPs done on time? Are you getting all of your reevaluations done on time? And those sorts of things. And I did share that with the board. And we will share that every May, and we would be happy to have a discussion about it. You know, and that could be our the growth of students that you will see in the equity report is vitally important. The report that the state puts out, that's the one that will cost you money and legal problems if you are not compliant, right? Those are the things that we need to make sure we're doing so that we are in compliance with the law.
So this has been 3 years they've done the report. And so, and then you said you would look into getting like.
Yeah, we'll be
this
able
year,
to,
last year and then the year before.
yes, that's my understanding is that
What's happened over the years, yeah.
well, yeah, my suggestion here is there are many things in monitoring reports that we as lay people, well, except you, you know, you're the only educator on the board. We understand mostly by looking at like, is stuff getting better or getting worse, which is why we ask about in all the monitor reports, always having like comparing year to year, like did stuff get better or did stuff get worse? And so also because you mentioned that it's already in the equity thing, I would just like the board to consider, you know, obviously not right now, but going forward that if we extended the executive limitation to list out disability status alongside race, gender identity, ELL status, and income level, then there would be no ambiguity that in the 211 monitoring report, we should just have a slide that says, you know, how's this looking over time? That's all I'm suggesting.
Based on the state's report.
Based on.
Or well, that's up to them. How they want to do it is, I'm just saying,
I
Well, it
think,
seems ridiculous to.
Yeah. I think based on the state's
The state's
report,
already giving you.
yeah, they're giving you the compliance or non-compliance, and it's something that I've never seen.
Right.
well, and
So.
we don't, according to our executive limitations, we don't currently require the superintendent to report on that. Which is a good reason to say, let's have the, so even, that's why I'm saying we should include it explicitly. A good reason is because we haven't got it, yeah.
Said that, and I said, based on the state's report,
you want them to report, the district to report to us based on the state's report. You know, that's what I would recommend, just because why are
Right.
you going to do what they already did? You know, staff has already got enough to do.
Right.
They can just give us the state's report.
With their summary.
Correct.
Right. Okay, so that
I think
was,
there are two layers though. There's the, you know, the monitoring report from the state really speaks to the mechanics of it. Are the IEPs being refreshed every year on schedule? Are the proper paperwork, you know, being submitted, so on and so forth? Doesn't really deal with outcomes for students with disabilities. And so tell me if I'm wrong or I'm not hearing you correctly, Seamus. What I hear you suggesting is not something heavy-handed, not an extra report, but just saying, making it explicit that students on IEPs should be included in our trend monitoring so that we can see if our implementation is successful in that respect in terms of academic achievement.
Could I make a similar suggestion? What I am loath to add limitations to Joe's plate, but if we are, would we be open to something that says, you know, the superintendent is shall not fail to present assessments of the district performed at the state level, so that if Joe and his team are getting state level assessments, it is the expectation that they are shared with us, and then they can choose the format. We're not tacking onto any specific monitoring report. They're already pretty robust, and we're not forcing them to put more information than those reports that is already there. We are just saying that if the state is reporting on the health of our district or academic performance, that we need to know about it in whatever capacity. And then it's up to Joe and his team how they present that. So that,
And are we also talking about making that report publicly available? I can't imagine there's any prohibition on it, but I'll ask the question.
no preference there.
State report, why not?
yeah,
And if it's gonna be something we'll see.
There may be some state reports that are confidential. I
Yeah,
have no idea.
you would think like you would want special educators here with this conversation
Yes.
because they are already so overworked.
Right.
This does feel like a little bit of an overreach to me. I don't know.
well,
I feel like this is like. If the state is monitoring and now you're gonna have your school board monitoring, it's a lot of people monitoring you. And I don't know, it doesn't feel great. to me.
Could I just ask so that I understand?
Yeah,
your
I
view?
mean, yeah.
Is your view that the overreach is in, where is the overreach? Is it in asking that if the state's report is presented to us by Joe is the overreach and that we are asking for an additional monitoring?
I think it's like additional monitoring. I mean, it just feels like one more person telling you you're doing something wrong, like one more like potential. I don't know, and particularly us, we don't know what we're talking about. That's the other thing that makes me very uncomfortable. You'd be like monitoring math, like you don't want me doing that. You know, or science, or history. You want Joe and his professional team doing that,
I think I have to,
but maybe I'm not understanding Seamus.
I think that what I heard is that it's already in, there's, like Joe said, there is already information about students and IEPs in the treatment of staff or treatment of, I'm sorry, equity 211. And so I think that it is a gap in our executive limitations, which should be well set up, that we specifically tell the superintendent to report on race, gender identity, ELL, and income level in terms of student outcomes, but we don't mention disability status. And I think it's just, we're not asking for a new monitoring report. All we're saying is in those slides, be sure to include longitudinal data.
So
We're doing it anyway.
So what
You're
Dan just
doing
said,
that, right?
isn't what Dan just said, right? Take the report. Isn't that what you said?
I said include the state report.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Yeah, I think they're two separate things. One is what we already do, and it would simply be adding the students with disabilities into that language. And we're already doing it, not a big deal. The other thing is the state report that talks about, are you meeting all of your procedural goals? That is just sharing that with the board every year when it's out, and you know, whatever kind of discussion you want to have about that.
I think that's really important to do, because I think it's good for us to know, it's good for the community to know, to hear this and to understand that.
Yeah.
So again, I think
Look,
it just speaks to the
scary.
transparency of, you know, of how we're complying with
And we have room to
that.
grow. We know that we have room to grow, right? We saw last year's report. We can get better at this.
Yep.
And then it's all about, instead of you're doing something wrong, it's like, how can we support this? That's, and I understand it doesn't always feel that way. I'm saying like, I'm saying that out loud because that's my thought of wanting to know what's not working and not like, why isn't this working? But more like, why isn't this working?
How do we fix
Yeah, how do
that?
we help support people to be able to
Awesome.
have what they need? So
Yeah.
I understand your concern, Laura.
Do we have any other board comment on this? The next item on the agenda is the second reading of policy E2 security cameras. So if you all remember, over the last couple months, we amended our executive limitation around cameras in schools to make it match the law and not more restrictive than the law. And and there's also a policy that we need to update that will make it so we match the law and we're not more restrictive than the law. So I'll put that on screen here. And then we'll just look at the section that we're suggesting a change. So can everybody see that?
Yep.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent, the only change that we are suggesting making to this policy is allowing the designated district administrator or designee to view things without this approval of the superintendent.
That's correct.
And can you just go over one more time the reason for that?
Yeah, the reason is because in real time, when things are happening in a building, principals need to be able to gain access to the footage faster, and having the ability to do that makes things run smoother, potentially keeps people safer, and just removes a level of red tape that kind of slows things down. We would still hold the prohibition against police accessing it. They would still need permission to access.
Okay, is there any board comment or question about this change? Oh, there's also this, right? I think actually, during our first reading, we also, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
Oh, you're right. It did, we are adding
It's the same
something where we
spirit
have a
that you're
log.
saying.
Yep, I think what you're gonna say is that we'll also keep a log. So anytime somebody does need to go in to look at the tapes, we will keep a log of who did it, when they did it, what they were looking for, those kinds of things. So we have a monitoring of our own, so we can see the people using the ability to use the tapes.
And so there, you don't have to submit a request in writing in advance,
No.
but you do have to write down the fact that you watched it. Yes.
Correct. Thanks for reminding me of that.
In light of that other change, is there any other board comment or question on that? All right, well, that concludes our second reading of policy E2 security cameras. And the final discussion item tonight is on the budget communication plan. Is there any thoughts about that?
Jen's looking at me.
Do you have an update? I saw you sent an email, but I haven't had a chance to look at it yet.
Fine, that's fine. We met last Thursday. It was Jen, myself, Ally, virtually. I would like to just say that unfortunately, the timing of this is coinciding with very busy personal and professional lives with Jen and myself. So I'll say the energy was a little low at the meeting. I don't know if you agree with that, Ally, but
Hot potato.
yes, and we looked for advice from Ellie, who's been through this before, and the two of us have not, so she was gracious enough to share with us things that they did in the past and things that may have worked. So we decided to we reviewed, first of all, I want to say Joe is knocking it out of the park with all of the information you're getting out to the community. And the webpage looks awesome, and the ad in the other paper was amazing.
And it came out again this week.
It
Looks good.
Loved it, and just, you know, lots of inspiration for us by what you guys are doing. So thank you. And one thing that we did think about doing was maybe adding, creating sort of a smaller, easy, breaking down the information, very easy to read and just being information, and including the QR code that people could scan and go to the website, or and also, I'm sorry, I didn't notice, on our budget website, do we have a link to the locations of the city locations of where you can vote?
I don't think so.
Okay, so that was something else we thought of, was getting the polling locations link available for people to, No, where there's-
on the city.
yeah,
webpage.
yeah.
Yeah, that's easy to add.
Yeah, just add that link was an idea that we had, just so people will know where they're supposed to vote if they aren't aware.
If the chair of the committee sends me an email to. remind
Yeah,
me-
I'll do that, yeah, I'll do that, yeah.
And I can do a QR code too.
And a QR code on, yeah, we were hoping, another round of the ad in the other paper, would approve that as well, and maybe if it could include the QR code this time. But it looks so great, I mean, when I flipped to it, I was like, oh, the colors and the.
all Joe's.
I
just put it in the paper.
It's great, it's great. And then we also talked about creating a little blurbs that we would each be able to share on our social medias and in our front porch forums. And we did stick with just trying to be just stating the facts and sharing it that way. And then also doing waving and holding up signs, please vote on the day of. The principals have sent out in their newsletters, budget information for this community of the parents to access, which is great. And I think, is there anything else I'm forgetting?
Well, that's good. He does have early voting,
Mm-hmm.
City Hall, but yeah, you're right, the polling places are not.
Yeah, I'll send you the link that you can just, and I also have a QR code already created that'll
Yeah, that'll be.
send you to, yeah.
Consider
Yeah.
it
Did it, okay.
done.
And there's how to register, so that's awesome.
Great.
When does early voting start?
Now,
It's
it's
already
already
started.
happening. You can
Oh, yeah, I
vote
saw
now.
the little.
So we leave it March,
You
yeah,
have to do it by March 3rd.
March 3rd or before.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, now you can vote
We
tomorrow.
drew some inspiration also from the fire department has got their vote information out. And it was what is it? Where is it? When is it? Why, what you need to do, who, and that's where we were kind of thinking through all of that, so.
Yeah, and I still need to work through it, and maybe make it, just a little bit better. I'm not very impressed with the work I did, so.
I'll look, I saw that you sent an email, but I was running here, so.
Yeah, it just needs a
Provide some
little
feedback.
bit more excitement. I don't have like any really good art programs on my computer to like make it look better,
Yeah.
so that's about it.
We had
Roadblock.
talked about, our committee was talking about pulling in Jean Marie and Joe for the next session. And so we're just a little bit behind, but I think that we can do that. So if your schedules are available, we can loop you in. And once we get a mock-up, we can share that with you if that works.
I just can't promote a levy, or a levy, I've seen Ohio words. I can't promote a budget, but any informational things that
That's
you
all
think
it
need to
is.
go out,
Yep.
send it to me and I can get it out.
That's-
Okay, yeah, I mean, I don't wanna put more on your plate, but you're so good at making these things, Joe, I might.
What about and front porch forum? Did we talk about that?
Yes,
Yes,
we did, I'll speak for the district. The district now has front page forum, and I put the thing that I sent yesterday to everybody is now on, put on
great.
front page forum today, too. So,
Right, that's good, yes.
yeah,
And then the other paper articles.
We we're not, I don't think any of us are actually writing articles. That was, not in the.
Did we talk about that? Did we talk about you guys doing a student perspective?
We
or
talked
did we
about
say
doing
that's-
it, and me and Mama needed to have a conversation if we could fit it into our schedule.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Well, we have break coming up and both of us are traveling, so
Yeah.
we're not sure about connecting and getting it in on time on everything.
And I'm break coming up and I do nothing, so if you need some help.
Oh, great.
I mean, I don't go anywhere.
What about the city's email list? I know the school has an email that primarily goes out to
Right, we're gonna-
parents, but the city has an email list.
And then there's what's the date? Is it Monday, the second? Is that the?
Yeah, the.
I'm not, yeah, they're not, probably we're not allowed to use that email list to promote budgeting, the
No,
budget,
just.
But
putting the
just-
information.
just the information. If, yeah, so we can ask if that's something we can access for
Right, the
that.
annual meeting, is that right? Annual
Yeah.
meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2026, okay. Okay, well, nice job, everybody. Thank you for doing that. Yeah,
Thank you.
no, I didn't, well, thank you. But I am available next week.
Okay,
Okay,
you can try to take the place of Ally and Mom and we'll see. if
Well, I
you-
don't think I can do that,
No.
but I can definitely help out with.
Oh, and did you announce how many people you got signed up?
Yes.
Yeah. she did this.
six.
And we still have more tomorrow as well, so we have
That's awesome.
lunch tomorrow. There's a great class at South Burlington High School called PWA, which stands
Yeah.
for Public Issues and World Affairs.
Yeah,
Great teacher as well. And we have, I think, 5 sections this semester. So we're giving out forms during that class as well and getting 17-year-olds to register prior to November too, even though that's
it's awesome.
That's
so
great to do that.
like makes things easier for the city too. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just want to also just say a quick thank you to Joe and to the finance team who put together the budget for creating something that is not that challenging to explain. The Vermont tax part of it is challenging, but overall, the budget itself doesn't feel like a really prickly thing to talk about, as it has in past years. So just really appreciate that work you guys put into that.
Yeah.
And regarding the budget also, I'd like to mention that we do have a call set up with Serini next week. And so that has
Oh, good.
been scheduled. And so that's happening. I believe it's next Thursday. We have
Yes.
a Zoom call with him. So that is happening. I know there's been some concern and questions from the community as well. I just got the paper and there was a letter also regarding like, hey, I wish you guys would listen and talk with him, and that is happening. So thank you for helping to facilitate that.
Thank you.
Who else is on that call? I'm on the call. Are you on that call next week?
I think it's,
Me
Joe.
and Elizabeth and April from the finance office.
And Jean Marie?
I think Jean Marie is.
Jean Marie's off. Okay, I'm on the call. Is there anybody else from the board that's on that call or wants to participate?
What's the date?
It's Thursday.
Like 10 in the morning.
It is.
What's the date? Next week?
It's
Yeah.
next week.
6, I think.
Oh, I could probably do.
If you want to.
You already said you're not doing anything. Spoken too soon.
The 26th, it's Thursday at 10 a.m.
Okay,
And the title is Follow Up Budget Methodology and Accountability Framework,
Thursday.
the
10 a.m.
26th at 10 a.m. From 10 to 11 a.m.
That's her.
Yeah, so if you wanna participate, I would say there's probably one more person that can go. We don't have a quorum. Anyone?
Oh, right, yeah.
Anyone?
I would love to
I'm
join
working
on the track.
unfortunately.
Okay.
I'm not trying.
Okey-dokey.
All right.
I really appreciate,
Are you forwarding that, Joe?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
yeah,
Thank
hearing community feedback about the budget and bringing a lot of the district's firepower to that meeting. That's shows a lot of respect.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that. Are there any other board comment on the budget communication plan? All right, so the next item on the agenda is consent agenda and planning. So there's one item on here that we have to take action on. I would enter, so first of all, is there any board discussion in general?
The items?
Maybe let's start with the action on the AP voucher. Does anybody want to talk about the AP voucher to ProCare before I ask for a motion on it?
I would just say a comment, extending another comment I'd made in a prior meeting. I forget if it was the last meeting or the one prior. And I'm a little reluctant to do this, given the thoroughness of Nicole's presentation and appreciating all the various funding sources and many of the requirements that I understand about how we have to fund special education. Would just ask Joe in the central office to examine, Howard Center, KidLogic, ProCare, not having no commentary on the value of the services they provide or no understanding of what they are doing on a daily basis, which students are serving. Just seeing the size and magnitude of the invoices and asking for some oversight and, making sure that our attention is being put there at a district level.
And our goal is to keep all of our kids here in district and we use that as when we can do it. So,
Yeah.
yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And I understand they provide a valuable role. I just want to be clear, I'm not, certainly not trying to get involved with operations. Just from the board level, commenting that we send a lot of money to these organizations. I want to make sure that we are examining the value of our dollar.
Yeah. Thank you.
Here, good comment, Austin.
So I would entertain a motion to approve the AP voucher check to ProCare in the amount of $67,000, 60,000. Wow.
Got it.
I'm start over. I would entertain a motion to approve the AP voucher check to ProCare in the amount of $67,094.98.
I move to accept the voucher.
Laura moves,
My second.
Emily seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Michelle?
Bye.
The motion passes. Is there any objection to anything else on the consent agenda?
Yeah, it's 1380. If you go to page 6. There are 5 line items for UVM Medical Center. The top 2 appear to be a duplication. They're the exact same price. It says the same thing, the same initials for the same dates.
And the two below it as well.
And the two below it, so for that, the 20,657, they're exactly the same. The 2 below it, for 9847, appear to be the same, but I can't read past CSH.
I believe that those are services for one individual student for 2 months of services. So they get the same service 2 months.
Well, this is from,
Oh, maybe it's 2 payments.
If you want
for
to.
span of 3 months. The date entries are the same, but the date entries do span multiple months.
well, the date entry,
And we understand you may not have the details at this point.
they span the entire school year.
Right.
If you look at the date, it goes from August 27th of 25 to June of 26.
So Gene really, I'm going to. It's likely the PO is an open PO for the year that we get charged monthly for, but oh, there you go, look at that.
Good job, Jeff.
Thank you.
That's all I was gonna say. When we created, I didn't hear your entire statement, but when, at the beginning of the fiscal year, we'll create general POs for things that we pay for over the course of the year. So say the electric bill, right? That we think is gonna cost us $20,000 for the year. We create one PO to that. We continually charge as the invoices come in, they're attached to that purchase order. So what you see in that large box there is likely what has been entered into the like comment line on a purchase order. That is like some of them above it are for towels and linens, like they're just general items.
No, I get that.
Okay. So as Joe said, those 4 charges that look identical are a December bill, a January bill,
And again, a December bill and a January bill for a single student.
And you're able to visually verify that on your screen?
A January bill, a December bill? Did you
So
say?
like
And then
the
in
first half
January
of
and
the
in
school
December.
year, second half of the school year.
Are those not duplicates or is it one?
Different services.
Same
But the
student,
dollar-
different services.
But the dollar amount is the same?
Dollar amounts exactly the
Sorry.
same.
The two $20,000 charges are for 2 separate months for one
Months.
student.
Okay,
And then the second $9,800 charges are two monthly charges for a student. Does that make sense?
And it covers, the way I heard so it's 2 separate months, or does it cover the first half of the school year and the second half of the school year?
No, it's 2 separate months. So $20,657 for like the month of December. And again, that same charge for it's like a tuition charge, similar to a tuition charge.
What is ESP? No,
These are special education charges, so I'm going to ask you if you happen to know what ESP is.
USPs. Yes.
The one thing that we could do here is we could,
Services.
we could accept the other ones, and if Dan, if you would like them to look into this, I think it's totally
I just wanna
within.
make sure we don't have a duplication.
Yeah.
And I'm fine accepting the rest of the consent agenda and just asking if we can have this.
Can I just
Mhm,
make one
sure.
comment before you answer that? What Joe told me that you had a question about this, and I went and physically looked, they are separate invoices. So that there's no duplication in payment here, I can assure you of that, I did check before this question came up. Like like there's a lot of different charges that look the same, like you'll see that in other, as you look further down for that
Yeah,
Vermont
no.
Association of the Blind, right?
associate.
So like
Yeah.
if we have 10 students that are getting a similar service from one vendor, the charge is going to be the same.
Right, no, and I get that, I'm looking, I looked at a lot of them, the initials changed. Like I said, when I saw that exact same price, exact same line item, exact same dates. So,
Yeah, it's because that PO, the notation in the PO notes it for the entire school year. But the invoice that's attached to this PO are 2 separate months worth of services.
Would it make sense to put the invoice number into the line item that we see?
So what you're seeing is only a portion of, the stack is this big, right? Like you see some of it, right? So there's more documentation and the process of which we go through to make sure that those errors don't happen is. It is checked, it is entered by a person, checked by 3 other people, so. I am.
and yeah, but you can understand why, like.
No,
somebody
yeah, I'm
looks
trying
at
to
it,
make
it's
sure
like,
that, yeah. I know for a fact, cause I did just go double check this, that there is no duplication here. I can understand why, looking at just the snippet of information, you would have a question about that. I know because of the process that we go through, it is nearly like somebody physically goes paper by paper, double checking that, so. I have 0 concern that we're paying something more than we ought to be.
okay,
I commend you for your vigilance. in
Yeah,
asking that
agreed.
question. Thank
Yep.
you.
Yeah,
it stuck out.
Yeah,
yeah,
no, thanks for asking the question.
Is the board satisfied with that answer?
Yes.
Okay. So are there any other,
yeah.
thank you.
It gets a little uncomfortable, like we have to be careful that we aren't bringing up student information, like,
No,
and for Dan, we pay, like, we gotta be careful about that as we have these conversations, but yeah, thank you for your attention to detail for certain.
Is there any other objections to the consent agenda? No, hearing no objections, the consent agenda passes. And I also want to echo thank you to Dan for filling your statutory obligations as a school board member of reading these. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's like, yes, That's your job,
Mhm.
so thank you for doing
You
that.
made Laura.
Lauren keeps us on time.
You get a gold star.
So the next item on the agenda is agenda planning. So let me pull that up.
Shames, may I ask you while you're talking right now to clarify, what will happen with the board if the budget does pass or doesn't pass in terms of meetings?
Yes,
Might
so,
not be the best time to ask that.
no, it absolutely is, so, so I'm looking at the March 4th, meeting agenda. I will bring that up on the screen. And, why don't we go through it in order, and then it does talk about that. Where it just.
Oh, okay.
So. So we have a, proposed executive session, we may not need that. Then traditionally, the superintendent will, introduce school board members. Then we have a reorganization. And then we have a 2026 to 2027 meeting schedule. Delina sent this to me at least, last week, and so we can get it out to you all so that you can see it before we're being asked to vote on it. Comments from the public, student representative report, third reading of security cameras. Looking at the academic calendar. And then here's an action item that is not like a normal March 4 action item. We talked about starting the process to update the ends policy, which is necessary to have a strategic plan. It's been one of Joe's recommendations. So charging a committee to coordinate that effort, make sure that the board has the right schedule on moving on that. So that's an action item. And then there's a discussion item, and this goes to your question, Ally, about the budget results. And it says possible action because, as you can see here, if the budget vote is not successful, the district would need to take action about what the next steps would be, as we only have 30 days to revote the budget. So we'll take action that day. If necessary.
Necessary.
And also, like, you know, again, we're not,
Positive.
we have to. We have to vote to take action. So like, we can be required to take action. And for some reason, we don't take action because it's not the right thing to do to take action. So I'm just saying that, like, just because, well, anyway. Yeah, I just want to say, we're never forced to vote. And then superintendent report, we don't have anything on here. I would like to suggest. Well, I don't have any suggestions for this, actually, for this day, for superintendent report. No, yeah, not for, I think March 4th is pretty well full. Is there any amendments to the March 4th? Okay, so I think March 4th is good.
So wait a minute, I'm sorry, when's election day? Is it, or
It's
town
the
hall?
third.
The third, so do you have Joe coming in for that? I missed that. Because we're gonna have potentially a new board member, right?
No,
Not until.
unless there's a
Not
write
until
in.
Not till
Unless they
Wednesday
get
the
sworn
4th.
in.
Oh, well, I thought that it was the 4th. I thought this was the meeting for the 4th.
It would be sworn in.
It would be
Holly
sworn
will be
in.
here.
They would-
She usually comes that day and then swears people. Like she
So
did
that's
that-
what I'm saying.
You want like a policy governance and,
Oh,
open
God,
meeting
no,
law?
that's not that night.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't know when we're gonna need to do it.
Sorry.
Because I
Well,
yeah,
I missed
yes.
it last year. I had to,
Jen, unless there's a write-in candidate, which I've not heard of yet,
We may not have.
we might not have a new
We might
person.
just be a 6-person board until we
Oh,
appoint
yeah.
somebody
Okay.
else.
okay,
I mean,
okay, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That
that's
could be a
fine.
possibility,
Great.
unless we all write in Austin.
That's fine.
in that case, you already know.
Stay in order here. So
Sorry.
I think that
A little-
the March 4th sounds good. And what Jen just brought up called to mind for me that we would need to train any new members on open meeting law and policy governance, but we're not gonna schedule that for March 4th.
That's fine.
So are we all good for March 4th?
Oh, except should we put something on there about filling the empty seat if there is not a write-in candidate?
No, let's wait until.
Well, we can
Should
warn
we
it.
warn to talk about it? Just talk about it, like
Well,
what's
put
the
it-
process?
Put it with budget
Yeah,
line item if necessary or however.
Sure,
you word
okay, I'll do that right now. Okay, and then, in terms of upcoming, meetings. I have, that's okay, so, I would like to hear about, student behavior. And I would also like to hear about parent accountability. And so, does the board have any other topics that they want the superintendent to kind of think about how we can hear about them? In the next month or two?
James, what do you mean by parent accountability?
So, for example, a problem that I've heard about is when some kind of discipline or something happens at school. And, the parent raises hell and makes a big problem for, the teacher, the principal. And I would like to understand, as a voter, a taxpayer and a parent, how the school thinks about parent behavior, parent accountability, what the school would ideally want from parents. Just kind of like give me some, and also how big is there a problem? How big is the problem? Like, are we spending a lot of time with teachers in a disciplinary process because a parent has brought up a frivolous complaint?
Well, why don't we attack is there a problem first?
Sure.
Before we start looking at ways to solve something that might not be a problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a really good distinction.
And one thing I would add too, because some feedback that I have heard from parents in the community is, maybe this goes to the discipline, that if there is an issue, I remember very clearly someone telling me that their child loves music, but they hadn't been to music for 3 weeks because there was a child that was in that music class that would throw a fit. And people would leave the
You gotta
music
clean
class
up after.
to deal with the child, and it wasn't fair for, the other
Right, I think that's
students. So I don't know
student
how
behavior.
that all.
Yeah, I would love to hear about
Fits in.
separately,
Uh-huh.
student behavior like this. There is a story being told in the community that instead of doing the rational thing and taking one student out, we do the irrational thing and we clear the classroom. So I think that it would be good to hear the
Understand.
official story on all of that.
Yeah, I think it's very dangerous to take anecdotal stories in the community and people aren't there and
Yeah.
give them life, so.
Yep.
Whatever myths that we would.
Yeah,
we can-
well,
Let's
we
can be
dispel,
happy to do.
then maybe we could
Demystify,
dispel.
sure.
Exactly.
And then the other thing, that I'll also work with Joe to schedule over the coming month is, again, that training and open meeting. And,
And on that, I would also like to say that I just finished my brown dog consulting training. Finally, I'm totally late to the game, and I think one of the things that we need to do is do our coaching associated with that, and I don't know if we've got that scheduled.
we don't have a schedule.
No, we haven't done it scheduled yet.
Okay, because that is
Some of
something
us weren't done.
that we need to, me, just, it says finish it on the
I have
15th.
no idea what it's up. I'm just.
On 16th.
Can I ask one more schedule question too? And I can ask this later if it's not relevant. There was like a work session on the books for the 11th. Is that not a thing anymore, or what does that
Yeah,
entail?
there's something on my calendar. for a
Yeah.
Session on the 11th.
Oh, I wonder if that's what it
Which
was.
11th?
Was that
March
March
11th?
March 11th. There, it said on the calendar, I believe it's still there on our website, that we have a board work session.
I don't know, Lauren is out at her daughter's wedding. I'm
cool.
curious whether that is, if a budget fails, a work session,
Mhm.
I'm not sure. I
But
don't
it's a warrant meeting. It's a warrant meeting, right?
Well, it's on the calendar.
Oh, okay.
Just Lisa, I
That's
just
it.
wanted to know.
That's a Wednesday. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
there's
a
3 Wednesday meetings,
Oh,
and we
right.
also have a meeting the day before meeting day. Right,
Goodness gracious.
Well,
what is that called?
That's
the one
the-
down at City Hall.
yeah, that's the town meeting day.
But we're not there in quorum.
We don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah, we don't.
you go and take the sheet.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Good.
Great.
Yeah.
Any other questions about agenda planning? Okay, so I want to take the opportunity to thank on behalf of the voters, the taxpayers, the kids, the staff, the parents, school board, Austin Smith for stepping up on the school board. This is his last meeting until you write him in. Until you write him in the empty vacancy slot.
Can
So,
we do that? I will carry the sign all day.
Oh, yeah, I will too.
I thank you very much for this experience and participating on this board. I've had a wonderful time and, I think highly of every individual on this board and the work you do. So I appreciate being included in it. And I'm really glad that you, as a board, you've found Dr. Park to lead this district for the next few years. And I think you're doing a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin.
Thank you,
It was
Austin.
nice work for.
Didn't really realize it was the last day. It's better when I didn't know it was the last day.
I don't think he did either.
Yeah, we weren't sure if it was this.
All right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Laura moves,
Second.
Jen seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.